Good morning. It's Leanne Manzaré on YouTube. Welcome to my channel. Thanks for coming. Today we're talking about defiance. And the reason we're talking about defiance is because I want to make a distinction between defiance and inspiration. And get you to see if you can check in on where you stand in those two concepts. So defiance, aside from being a TV show, sci-fi TV show, is an attitude of rebellion, an attitude of sticking up for one's rights, an attitude of the underdog beating the big guy. And these positions have in the past, mobilized communities and civilians and slaves and all types of oppressed individuals to escape their bonds. And in many ways, when the bonds are external, when the bonds are, imposed upon you and your freedom is usurped, in many ways there seems to be no other alternative to achieve your freedom. So that fighting mood is very effective in those cases, in the case of a war or a rebellion, or even a sports mentality. Let's never take no for an answer, or go down fighting, give it all you got, give one for the Gipper. Those are all sports slogans that represent, unity and conviction and determination and very, strong qualities. But they're not necessarily the same as inspiration. And the reason I'm making the distinction is because inspiration, in many ways, is more of an internal process, whereby we still may be in chains, or we still may be oppressed, or we may still be functioning in a place or a mindset that takes away our freedom. And this could be because we've adopted a set of social codes or mores, or internalized, some tapes that people have been feeding us and we've been feeding ourselves and about our limitations and about our prospects. And then these things can in some ways erode our self-image. So inspiration is an internal change wherein we find some joy in life, we find a reason to live, we find some joie de vivre. And it doesn't have to come from a place of defiance. Because defiance is something that you think of when, a child is rebelling, or a temper tantrum, or refusing to follow orders, refusing to obey, refusing to accept the authority that is imposed upon a child. And in some ways, this is exactly the crux of the issue. Because when a child is being defiant, in many cases they're resisting because they don't want to do what it is that is being asked of them. And as a child, sometimes it is important that you overcome their defiance and just insist, because they don't always know what's good for them or what's safe or what's dangerous. And there's a certain amount of parenting that requires you to teach your child the requisite skills so they can survive in the world. But there's a point at which I think we stop, we go beyond, just teaching kids about safety and survival, and we start teaching them about limitations in society and what they can and cannot do and what is acceptable, and we start shaming them, and we start guilting them, and we start forming their self-limiting beliefs. And in many ways, this is what people will also become defiant over, because they don't want to be shaped, they don't want to be limited, they don't want to be forced into someone else's picture of what they should be. They want freedom to be who they are as an individual, and this is their birthright, and they are divine and graceful as soon as they entered this world. So to limit them, if you're limiting them too much, sometimes you will get some defiance from your kids, especially your teenagers and whatnot. But recognize that as growing independence. And sometimes instead of trying to squash it, maybe try to understand it a little bit, maybe encourage it a little bit. See where it's coming from, see what it is that the kid wants to do, give them room to explore, and then there's not such a need to fight against you. But that said, I'm talking more about Defiance as an individual. When we move from adolescence into adulthood, now more or less our lives are our own to control, and our decisions are our own to make. So why do some of us make decisions that continue to support the limiting beliefs and negative tapes that keep running through our head? We do it because we don't have anything else. We don't listen to our inspiration anymore. We don't listen to what it is that we love to do and it's telling us to go try, go do. And when we do listen, if we have a setback, then all the naysayers come running at you. See, I told you that was never going to work. Why'd you ever do that? Go do something sensible now. And really, it's sort of beyond the time for our parental figures to be making those kind of judgment calls for us as adults and in our own adult lives. So that means that we, as individuals, have to find our own inspiration. Now, if you're still being defiant, something is inside you that's fighting to get out, and you got to figure out what that is. Whether it's an entrepreneurial nature, whether it's a desire to travel the world and see new cultures and new ways of living, whether it's an artist trying to escape, or a chef, or you're just resisting some path that you've been set on that you didn't even choose for yourself, or you chose but reluctantly. Let's say, I'll pay for your college, but you have to go to medical school, and maybe you want to be an engineer, and you just couldn't negotiate that as an option. So instead of taking on student debt and going your own way and paying for it yourself, you opted to take the money and sell out and do something else that you didn't want to do. Those are things that bind us. Those are decisions and choices we make that can create a cage for us from which we then feel trapped. And it's a cage that we made for ourselves. So all I'm saying is, if you're feeling defiant, maybe ask yourself why, and try to figure out what would inspire you to a different way of life. And that may be all you need to know so you can begin the process of freeing yourself. And we'll talk more about how to be free in another video. But for now, become inspired, find what moves you, use your internal guidance system to figure that out, and keep watching. Please subscribe to my channel. I'll see you on the next walk. Till then, Leanne Mazur on YouTube, signing out.